it certainly feels like we're living in a post-truth world. It feels like misinformation and disinformation is far more prevalent than it's ever been in the past. And it feels like our fellow citizens believe all sorts of things that aren't true, and that they're doing this more now today than they ever have in the past. I want to throw a little bit of caution onto those conclusions, however, and I want to try to urge us to put the blame for current circumstances where it belongs, which is usually with our political elites. So what I would say in the US, although many people think, and that it's often reported, that conspiracy beliefs are increasing, there's very little evidence of this. I mean, most conspiracy theories are believed at the same level now that they were a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. They're not increasing across the board. There are, of course, a few that have increased, and there are reasons for that, but many have gone down and many are stagnant. So it's not the case that all Americans are becoming more conspiratorial. And I don't find evidence that that's the case in other countries, in some other countries either. Even when we measure Americans' general proneness to believe in conspiracy theories generally, we find that over the last decade or so, that hasn't increased. So people are largely the same, and they're believing in the same things they have a long time ago, regardless of the internet. So the question is, what's really changed? And the answer in the US is very much Donald Trump. And I'll give you one example here that should be telling. When I first started studying conspiracy theories 10 years ago, I started a Google alert on the term conspiracy theory. So every night I would get back all the articles written with the term conspiracy theory in it. I would get back between 5 and 6 articles a day. Once Trump got into the race, I was getting between 50 and 100 every single day, and that stayed consistent since. So the media is paying attention to conspiracy theories largely because our political elites have been communicating with conspiracy theories. And not only does the media have to cover them because of our political leaders, but they have to explore the topic more generally too, which they have. Oftentimes they're concluding that we're more conspiratorial than we ever have been in the past, but they never present evidence of this. What's really changed is that our elites are using conspiracy theories to motivate their followers, and the media is covering it. That's what's really changed. So it's not like people are inherently more conspiratorial now. It's not that people have changed. It's that in the US, we had a president who used this, who weaponized this. And I would suggest that that's similar dynamics in other countries too, where we should really be placing a lot of our blame for beliefs in conspiracy theories and their spread on our political leaders. Now, of course, disinformation campaigns have some effect, but political leaders are incredibly influential. They can influence their leaders to believe all sorts of stuff and conspiracy theories. Just like in the US, we have 80% of Democrats now, 80% of Republicans believing the election was rigged. Why? Well, the normal number would be about 40%, because after each election, almost half of the losing party thinks it was rigged. They're just upset that they lost. But now it's double that. Why? Because Trump and his allies in the conservative media and in Congress pushed for months on end the idea that it was rigged. So we're seeing that major influence there. And that's not the fault of a Twitter bot or a disinformation campaign. You don't need those things when you have the president of the United States doing it. So in my country, at least, the blame belongs with our political leaders. They have the bully pulpit, and in recent years, many of them have used it to spread misinformed and bad ideas. And what I would, again, I don't want to speak too much to situations in other countries where I'm less familiar. I would say oftentimes blame needs to be put on our political leaders and not just on communication mediums or bots.